One of the questions that I get asked a lot on the channel, and one that's not easy to answer, is how I deal with the mental aspects of the game. Now, I'll be completely honest with you, I'm not a sports psychologist and I'm not a professional pool player. I'm just an amateur player that plays in a local pub league. Having said that, that doesn't mean I don't get nervous or struggle with the mental side of the game the same as anybody does at any level. And I've been involved with competitive sports for, since I was a kid, athletics at quite a high level and football and things like that. And I've learned over the years lots of ways of dealing with stress and nerves and all those sorts of things. And you can apply the same techniques to the game of pool. Now, I'm aware that me just standing here talking to you might become a little bit boring compared to some of the other videos, so I've dropped a few little pool shots in between just to keep things going throughout this video. Hopefully keep you watching. Now, let's start off by talking about nerves. Now, I remember the first time, probably about 10 years ago, a friend of mine phoned me up and asked me if I wanted to go and play for the local pub team and game pool. And I'd played pool before, but I'd never played properly and competitively. And I remember going along and said, yeah, that's fine, I can hit a few balls. Went along, and suddenly, when you're at the table and there were 12 blokes and other people in the pub all standing around watching closely everything you're doing and your team depending on you to win a game, suddenly the nerves kicked in and it was a completely different ball game. The game of pool, you need to be relaxed, you need to have a nice smooth swing, you need to be calm when you play. And when your hands are shaking and your heart's beating, that's incredibly difficult to do. And you can understand why at the high level, snooker players and professionals, why they're so good. They can do that under the pressure of people watching. And it's no different for the rest of us. Now, the first thing I'd say about it, this might sound obvious, is that was 10 years ago and I struggled with that. Now I don't, because I've been playing for 10 years. And the more you do it, the more you play and the more you put yourself in that situation, the more you get used to it. It sounds obvious, but don't run away from those nerves just because you find it difficult and you might find it a bit nerve-wracking. Keep at it. The more you play, the more you get used to that environment, the more you practice and become confident in your ability, the less those nerves will come into play. That doesn't mean you won't get nervous, and I still have plenty of times when I'm nervous in a game, particularly if it's a high pressure game or on the black ball or something like that. And there are a few little things that you can do to try and alleviate those nerves. So some obvious things are, first of all, take your time. There's nothing worse. If you get down to the table and you get down on a shot and you can feel yourself, you can feel your hand shaking on the table, you can feel that you're not steady. First of all, stand up. Just get up from the shot and take a minute. Take some time to breathe and compose yourself and try and get rid of those nerves before you get down. If you're down there and you're feeling nervous, don't play the shot. Give yourself a bit of time. Hopefully, if you're playing in a league like I do, there's no time limits or anything, so there's no pressure from that point of view. Compose yourself before you take that shot. Now, in terms of getting rid of those nerves, it's easier said than done, obviously. But there's a few things you can do. Simple things, like I said, just standing up, chalk your cue, take a few minutes to look around, and while you're doing that, just breathe. Count you're breathing in and you're breathing out, breathing in and breathing out, nice and slowly, and try and bring that heart rate down and just compose yourself a little bit. And that can really help before you get down to take a shot. Another thing that happens a lot is I find in particular, when it tends to be a pressure game or a pressure ball, the environment around you might go quite quiet because everybody's respecting the game and everything goes quiet and everybody's watching that shot, and that just builds the pressure on you. So another thing you can do is try and diffuse that pressure a little bit. If you're finding that it's dead silent and it's making you feel nervous, stand up and make a joke about it. Try and get some noise in the room to try and just diffuse that tension a little bit, and that can help you relax before you play the shot. If you're feeling under immense pressure when you're down there, get up, walk over, get yourself a drink, make a joke to someone else about, oh God, this is a bit nerve-wracking, and you might find that that actually makes it less nerve-wracking. Now, another emotion that comes into play can be anger or lack of positivity. Now, I see this a lot in the game, and it has a massive effect on people's games, where inevitably you will play a shot at some point that doesn't go the way you want it to. Either you miss the pot, or you get bad position, or something doesn't go the way you want it to. And the worst possible thing you can do is to get angry. Okay, it's not worked, but once it's happened, there's nothing you can do about it. As soon as you start to get angry, your body tenses, your arms tense, your mind stops thinking about the important things that you need to do, and it has a big effect on your game. It's easier said than done, but if you miss something and something doesn't go to plan, try to brush it off and just say, okay, that's happened, there's nothing I can do about it now, I need to move on. And relax as much as you can. Now, I know that's easy to do, but it's vitally important. The amount of times I see someone do something, they'll get bad position, they'll get down the next shot and they'll smack it because they're upset, and then they miss the next shot as well, and that's even worse. So take your time after you miss something and try and compose yourself, and just try and say to yourself, okay, it doesn't matter, move on. Anger is one of the worst traits you can have in a game of pool, and it really doesn't help you at all. Something else that I find really important when I approach any sport, but particularly pool, is to have a positive approach to the game. And I'd say it almost goes to the point of having overconfidence or a slight arrogance. The best players in the league that I play, when you watch them play, when you see them come to the table, they just look like they're going to pot everything. They know that, and they give off an air of that as well when they play. It might not be that they're actually any better than anyone else, but that confidence and that air of invincibility helps them to focus on the game. So when you approach a shot, think about, okay, I've done this shot 100 times in practice. I know I can pot this ball. There's no doubt in my mind that I'm going to miss that. Don't even think about what happens if I miss, or what happens if this goes like that. Those sorts of thoughts are not going to help you to be positive towards it. Approach each shot with, I've done this 100 times before, and that confidence that you know you're going to pot the ball, and that will have a massive impact on your game. That being said, if you are an amateur player and you're aware of your lack of skills in certain areas, then maybe it might be worth avoiding those things where it does have a negative thought. If you're going for a shot which is a long shot along the rail, and you know that your success rate with that sort of shot is very low, and you don't do that even in practice very often, then maybe it's not a good idea to play that shot. Because you will be playing that shot thinking to yourself, I don't think I'm going to make this. I'm not very good at this shot. And that's not a good approach to have. If you're going to go for that shot, you've got to commit to it, and you've got to make sure that you're confident you're going to get it. So sometimes, especially if you're nervous or there's a pressure situation, and you find yourself going for a shot that you're not confident you're going to get, then stand back and think, well, okay, is that the best thing to do? Should I perhaps go for something else? Maybe I should play a snooker or something else. So it's not always a case of being so confident that you think you are invincible and can pot everything, if deep down you know that that's a little bit above your capabilities. Something else that's obviously really important and can help to alleviate those nerves and tension leading up to the shot, is to have a pre-shot routine. Now, I've covered this in another video, but just by going through the motions and doing the same thing each time can really help you to block out any other thoughts that might creep in when you're about to take a shot. So that might be, you might start by chalking your cue, looking at the shot, looking around the table, assessing what shot you're going to play, lining up the shot, walking around to get onto the line of the shot, stepping into the shot, getting down onto the shot, maybe feathering a certain amount of times that you do the same every time, pulling back and pausing before the shot, taking a breath and taking a shot. And if you do the same thing in the same way every time you play a shot, and you focus on that, that can help you to ignore anything else that might be going on, whether it's noise in the background or silence in the background even. And just by going through that same routine can really help you to concentrate on the shot and hopefully block out some of those other emotions. Now, I've talked about positivity, and another thing that I always bang on about in every video I make is practice. And you have to have belief in your abilities, and that belief comes through practice. The more and more you practice as many situations as you can, the more when you come to the table you're going to believe in your ability to carry that out. If you're coming to a shot and you know you've played that shot a million times in practice, you're going to be more confident that you can succeed in making that ball. And it's quite simple. You know, it's the same as playing lots of games and getting used to a pressure situation. Playing lots of shots in practice is going to increase your own self-belief that you can make those balls. So you've got to expect when you start out in the game to have more nerves than when you've been playing for longer. It's just natural because you won't have played as many shots as someone who's been playing for years. But if you persist with your practice, you vary your practice, make sure you're practicing lots and lots of aspects of the game so that nothing's too unfamiliar, that will have a huge help when it comes to the mental side of the game. Try not to just play games all the time. You know, if you're lucky enough to have a table like I have, particularly at the moment when it's difficult for us to actually go and play pool, or even when things open up again and you can get down the pool hall, don't just play matches all the time. Set aside some time to do drills, to perfect things and focus on certain things, particularly if there's shots that you're finding in a game where you are feeling a little bit nervous or a little bit under pressure. Practice those things, do them over and over and over and over again so they become second nature. And that's ultimately how everybody improves. You know, I do that all the time and I'm still working on my game. I've got a long way to go to be at the level I'd like to be, and you practice to try and get there. That will have a huge help on the mental side of the game. The more you believe that you know about the game, the more you understand what you're doing, the less you are likely to get nervous about it or worry about it. One final thing, and I say this to my kids all the time, I've got two young kids that both play sports, and that's to try and smile and enjoy the game. It's very difficult when you do any sport to relax if you're tense, if you've got a frown on your face or you're angry or anything. It's very difficult to relax. Pool is all about having a nice, smooth, relaxed cue action, and that's a lot easier to do if you're happy and you're enjoying it. My son is a prime example of a sulky teenager, and when he plays football with that usual sulky look on his face, he doesn't play as well. If he's happy and he's smiling, you can see the confidence flow through him and he plays much better. And it's exactly the same with a game of pool. So try where you can to relax, smile, have a joke with your mates when you're playing, and keep it as enjoyable and don't put too much pressure on yourself. If you lose a game, then move on. I've also mentioned earlier about anger and stuff, and One thing that's also worth remembering is that when you're playing, you are in control of what's happening when you're at the table. But it's worth also remembering that there are aspects of this game that you can't do anything about. So if your opponent's at the table and they clear up, don't get angry about it. Congratulate them. Well done. That's, there's nothing you can do about that. If they come to the table, break and clear up in one visit, that's not your fault. You haven't done anything wrong. Don't let that get you down. Yeah, move on and try and come back and do the same thing. If your opponent gets a fluke or something, that seems unfair, again, there's nothing you can do about it. There's no way you can change that. Your emotions will not change that situation. So just accept it and move on. Obviously, when you are at the table, then you're in control. But there might still be things like there might be a bad table that rolls off or something. Then, okay, you could argue that you should be aware of that. If you've been watching the games and watching other matches going on, you need to make sure that you're aware if the table rolls off slightly. And try not to play those shots if you know that thing's coming up. But if that happens the first time, again, accept it, move on, smile, relax, and hopefully that will help you get through the next game and the next shot. If you want to see more practice routines and pool tutorials, then please remember to subscribe. And if you're interested in any of the equipment I use in this video, then there are links in the description below.